Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors meeting to order on Tuesday, February 26th at 10 a.m. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. See, my battery works. We have 19 present, 3 absent. Presentation of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence. Anybody have any correspondence they want to add? You also see the unassigned fund balance in there. Public comment. Does anybody in the audience care to make a public comment? It will be limited to 30 minutes, 3 minutes apiece. If you want to speak, please approach the microphone.
Hi, good
What's your
morning.
name?
My name is Paul Zahn from Forestville. I would like to discuss available grants and natural effective solutions for clean lakes. There are many grants available for lakes and waterways, spraying invasive weeds on land. Just recently, several of us went to a meeting in Kewaunee County, and they received an EPA grant for $600,000 just for invasive weeds on land. Maybe a little bit along the water, but mostly land. I have a map of 17 watersheds in Wisconsin receiving grants for water problems due to agricultural runoff, but Door County watershed is not on it. There are TRM grants available for local governments controlling pollution from non-point sources. And I have had several discussions with Jeff Connors, Vice President of Everblue Lake Solutions. He's completely up to speed on our problems here with phosphorus and nitrate levels. Their company has removed over 2 foot of muck from Indian lakes in Michigan using just aeration and biological acceleration. They had first treated 85 acres, approximately the size of our mill pond. They found it successful and did it on the entire 500-acre lake. There's Scott Aeration in Holland. They use these natural methods, and their company has products like bioblasters, solar and wind.
Excuse me, Paul. Just
Oh,
the paper's hitting the microphone.
sorry. And I have a package with all their products and information too. And in Greenville, Wisconsin, there's Lake and Pond Solutions. It has expertise in these solutions as well. Their owner is biologist Matthew Harp. He expressed interest in helping us. They've been in business for 19 years. A drawdown will not remove the sediment, which is filled with phosphorus and nitrates. And when refilled, will still be in our water, and the sorts continuing to flow in. Representative Joel Kitchens is chair of the Environmental Assembly. He would be instrumental in getting us some of these grants. Adam Tobias from his office told me they'll be looking into available grants, and Governor Evers is trying to receive $70 million for Wisconsin water quality issues. If we could just get a small percentage of this, we could solve our problems naturally. So the solution, I'd say, applying for these many grants available to fix both problems, agricultural runoff and the natural solutions I mentioned or others. These are not Band-Aid approaches, but solutions that will be effective for decades, solving the problem. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Christine Reed, Sleepy Hollow Drive. I live on the Mill Pond. Work with Friends of the Forestville Dam. We continue to be strongly opposed to the drawdown, and support the other methods that he has. We as a group can be an asset to you, work with you to find a better solution instead of leaving the sediment in place. This is disrupting people's lives, and on a personal level, we ask that you take that into consideration too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Anybody else? Any supervisor's response? Approval of the minutes of January 22nd, 2019, regular meeting.
Motion to approve.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Pending business updates? None. We're going to skip down to item 12, special reports. When do you want to start? Housing study. Mariah? We'll do the county housing study summary presentation with Mariah. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm Mariah Good, Director of the County Land Use Services Department. And I don't know if you've all gotten emailed the housing study. I know there was a link in your packet, but I know there's been a lot of discussion in the community and a lot of questions. So Ken asked me to come this morning and give you kind of a background on the study. All right, Jill, how do I work this clicker? You mean the big yellow button? So the study was contracted from the Door County Economic Development Corporation with AECom, which is an engineering firm, and the staff that we worked with were mostly out of Milwaukee and Chicago. I wanted to give you a little background first on housing efforts in Door County. This is not a new topic. I know there's been discussions about seasonal housing for sure for many decades, but there's also been a lot going on in the last 20 years or so as well. The Economic Development Corporation, in I think the year 2000 was the earliest that I could find in my notes, started an Attainable Housing Committee, and that was in response to a study that the EDC did trying to identify barriers to employers in the county, and housing was one of the things that rose to the top of that list. There's been a lot of other things going on. We've had numerous housing summits. There have been other studies before the one that I'll talk about today. We've done housing rental inventories. There's been community development block grant funds that have come into the county that have, and I think in the one case in particular, went to down payment assistance. We've got an active Habitat for Humanity chapter in the county. We have Lakeshore Community Action Programs, which does a lot of housing work with folks in the community. We have the Door County Housing Authority, which I noticed that their annual report is in your packet today, so that was good timing. So hopefully you're familiar with what they do. We've got the U.S. Department of Agriculture has funds that have gone through various projects in this community, and then also Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority. The county and the city have done a lot of work on our zoning ordinances over the years to try and make it easier to provide housing that would theoretically be affordable. Developers and the Board of Realtors, employers are taking things into their own hands and trying to provide housing for their employees. And then all of these groups have been doing educational efforts as well. So what's going on that's new? This AECom study was completed in 2019. The Economic Development Corporation did what they called a symposium a couple of weeks ago at the Crest Center that was invite-only agencies and municipalities that would be theoretically doing something about housing in the county or that contributed money to the study. The county, the city, the villages, and the towns are all talking. We've been having a lot of conversations with a group called NeighborWorks, Green Bay. NeighborWorks is a national organization, and there's a Green Bay affiliate, and they're doing a lot of really good work in Green Bay, and they're hoping to expand their activities in Door County because we're actually already considered part of their territory. There's a reinvigorated nonprofit housing trust called the Door County Housing Partnership. That's a separate standalone nonprofit group that will be a vehicle that any municipality or the Economic Development Corporation or a private donor or developer could use as they're developing or buying workforce housing in order to make sure that it stays affordable in perpetuity. And then there's a Northern Door group called the Interfaith Prosperity Collaboration, which is doing some good work. They're trying to put a more human face on the problem, and you'll be seeing photographs and interviews and videos coming out of that group in a couple of months. So definitions, because people get confused about what we're talking about. So the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development decades ago defined affordable housing as being housing that costs you less than 28 to 30% of your gross household income. Obviously, gross household income can vary wildly from family to family, so that definition is kind of meaningless on an individual level. At a community level, when people talk about affordable housing, what they're talking about is housing which people of median income or below can rent or purchase for no more than 28 to 30% of their gross household income. What's median household income? That is the income of the household that's in the middle of a list of households for that community. So half of the people below them make less than they do, half the people above them make more than they do. That median household income figure in Door County in 2016 was about $54,000. Workforce housing is another phrase that's used a lot, and that's also sometimes called attainable housing. That is generally defined as being housing that's affordable to people that earn between 60 and 120% of that median household income figure. You'll also hear people talking about area median income, which is the same thing as the household median income. One other item of background that I wanted to bring to you before we get into the study is with regard to United Way's ALICE project. I know you've had Amy Conley come talk to you, but I don't remember what year it was, but there's new numbers out for this study. ALICE stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. So these are people that are working in our community who are above the poverty line but are facing financial instability. So this chart shows you Door County compared to the state, 2010 when the project first started in Wisconsin, and 2016, which are the most recent numbers we have. So the state has stayed relatively stable in terms of the population that falls into these different categories, but Door County has risen by 5% over the period from 2010 to 2016. So that bottom blue piece are the people that are actually in poverty in this community. The darker blue bar in the middle are the people that are considered that asset limited income constrained employed group. And I just provided a couple of numbers. There's a gigantic report if you really want to look into this, and there's actually a couple of really good summary sheets out there that talk about all these numbers. But I picked a household of 2 adults and 2 school-age children. That survival budget, so you're not in poverty, you're at the bottom of the blue bar, is $47,400. The stability budget, which is where the green bar starts, is $89,000. And then think what I just said about our median income being $54,000. So there's a huge chunk of the population that are even at median income that are in that kind of instability range, where one medical accident or car failure or something can make their lives insecure. So the housing study discussions started about this about 1.5 years ago at that Attainable Housing Committee that I was talking about. I don't need to go in this in detail, but it was a lengthy process, and the final draft was ready a couple weeks ago. These were the study sponsors. Those were in your packet as well. So the study parameters. We wanted AECOM to quantify the problem and then to recommend strategies. We all know that there's a housing problem in the county and that workers that live here can't afford housing, but we wanted some numbers so that the Economic Development Corporation and others could go out and try and find developers to actually develop something specific. We asked them to look at the county by geographic area, so we divided it into northern, central, and southern Door. And then we asked them within each area to look at 3 topics: year-round workforce housing, and again, that's that 60% to 120% of area median income. To look at year-round senior housing, and we're not talking about like assisted living or things like that. We're talking about senior citizens that are living in the county that want to live independently, that may need housing that's different than what they have. And then seasonal housing, which was defined as beds. And those are the study areas. So the study talked about all sorts of different issues, and this, as you know, is a significant problem for the county. It's a multifaceted problem. They identified a lot of things that we already knew, but that there's a long-standing shortage of rental units. There's a long-standing shortage of housing for seasonal workers. The report didn't really talk about quality of housing, but we're hearing lots of stories about seasonal and rental housing that's out there being of very poor quality. They talked in the study a lot, they did a lot of research on how the second home market is driving up housing and land costs in the county, how increased tourism is affecting homes and units as far as the cost and the availability. So tourist rooming houses, which people generally tend to just call Airbnb, that is taking a lot of housing out of the stock that used to be rental housing or maybe affordable housing that somebody would have bought, is now being used by transient housing. Building code requirements, zoning ordinance requirements, there are things that we can't do much about the building code, but the zoning codes we could take a look at to see if there are things that we can do to make it easier to develop housing. There's a lack of land that's designated for multifamily or dense housing. There's a lack of public infrastructure as far as sewer and water. The only places in the county that have public sewer and water are Sister Bay and Sturgeon Bay, and that's why you see all the housing development or the more dense housing development happening in those places. Housing construction costs are high here. We're basically an island. And our construction industry in this county in particular has not rebounded since the recession. So we're hearing in our office from builders who are having a hard time finding help. And then I think things like tariffs, I think, are making it more expensive to develop generally, not just in Door County. It's more profitable to develop high-end housing. So if you're a construction company owner in this county and you have a limited crew and limited time, it's going to be more worth your while to be working on the higher-end projects, which, you know, second homeowners are willing to pay for. And then there's the other related issues like transportation and daycare costs, which also factor into those ALICE figures. So this is one of the things that the study did, which I'm not sure has ever been done in any of the previous studies, which is it identified, based on the job growth in the county between 2010 and 2017, the number of workforce rental apartments, and they just assumed that these new jobs, people would want workforce rental apartments that should have been built that were not. And that is 470 units total, split between Northern Door and Central Door. It was determined that Southern Door was not lacking in any during that time period. And then again, looking forward, so we're already theoretically, according to the study, down 470 rental units. Looking forward for the next 5 years, which actually included last year and this year, there's another 110 units that need to be built between Northern Door and Central Door. And that's assuming that job growth and everything else continues the way that it did over the course of the time period that the study looked at. Those rents, as far as what they identified as what we need, are units that are mostly between $500 to $1,000 a month, with more than half of those in that kind of $500 to $800 range is what we're really lacking. So workforce owner-occupied homes needed. They didn't identify the gap that should have been in place, but what they projected forward for the next 5 years is that we need 40 homes in Northern Door and 30 in Central Door, and all but 5 in each of those geographic categories needs to be priced somewhere between $60,000 to $125,000 in order to be affordable for our workforce. And again, Southern Door was determined to not be lacking in that area based on projections of what they thought would be developed there. Senior housing, next 5 years projection, they're projecting a need for rental apartments split between Northern, Central, and a small amount in Southern Door. And then owner-occupied homes, a significant number in both Northern Door and Central Door, and then a small number in Southern Door. And again, these are not thinking of assisted living facilities, but just a place that a senior might want to move into, whether they're moving into the community or whether it's somebody that lives here that might want to downsize from what they have right now. Seasonal housing, they identified a shortage between 2010 and 2017 of a total of 455 beds split between the 3 areas of the county, again, mostly Northern and Central Door. And then they're projecting as needed for that 5-year 2018 to 2023 period, another 115 beds that they think would be needed. They didn't provide any analysis regarding recommended rent levels, but I think, I can't remember off the top of my head what the sort of going rate is for rooms. It's definitely less than $100 a week for sure for somebody that's looking for a seasonal bed. So what strategies do they recommend? They talked about, you know, different funding sources that are out there. They did not find a magic pot of money that we're going to be able to use that we didn't know about before for us to tap into. Some of the things that they're recommending doing aren't actually even options in Wisconsin, so that's a little bit frustrating. And some of them aren't actions that we can take as a county as well. I mean, there might be some things that municipalities can do that the county itself can't do. As far as administration and what they saw moving forward, they didn't really identify any direct or specific paths, but they provided a lot of options for things to be looking at. So certainly, Door County Economic Development Corporation is going to continue to be very involved. Municipal staff, so county and city staff, whatever towns and villages are interested in doing something there, staff. The Door County Housing Authority, there would potentially be the possibility for them to expand what they do, given your oversight. Local units of government. The Tourism Zone Commission, I don't know that they saw them necessarily as being something that would provide housing, but they had a lot of data that the consultants used to do a lot of their analysis as far as how the second home and transient housing market is affecting housing. NeighborWorks Green Bay, which I already mentioned, and then the Door County Housing Trust or similar organization. And like I said earlier, the Door County Housing Partnership, which is what is generally called a housing trust, has been reestablished. So that tool is in place. So what actions do they think should happen? I put these kind of in the order of, well, I picked the order, let's just say that. So amend zoning codes to allow for higher or more flexible densities, taller buildings, less public hearings, that kind of thing. That's something that we've already been talking about at the staff level, and Becky Kerwin, my planner, and I have already volunteered to do that with the county zoning ordinance and to help Marty at the city take a look at their ordinance and to help any villages that are interested look at their ordinances as well to see whether there are things in there that are impediments that don't need to be there as far as how this type of housing gets developed. Working with local governments to identify properties that can be proactively rezoned and or redeveloped, especially on our new public sewer. That's also something that we've volunteered to help with. We've got all the different mapping layers and zoning layers, and we know which properties are improved and which aren't, and what the future land use maps and comprehensive plans say about those properties. So we can work with municipalities to identify either properties that they own or that maybe they could buy or whatever that could be used. Evaluating potential expansion of public sewer and water facilities. That's a big one. Then that's a major problem in the county. There is money out there from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that can assist communities in expanding or adding to their infrastructure capabilities, but you're talking about huge expenses and huge messes in those communities. I'm sure, not that you replaced your sewer in Sister Bay when you were doing anything, but your roads were ripped up for quite a while. I think it'd be even worse than that, probably. Considering dorm-like construction, or dorms like were constructed in the Dells for seasonal beds, encouraging employer-assisted programs, enhancing trades curriculum at NWTC. I think they already have a pretty good trades curriculum, so I'm not quite sure what the study meant by that, but that was one of the suggestions. Expanding the county geographic information system layers to include a housing layer. This would theoretically be in the realm of my department, but I can tell you that there is no way that we would have time to do this, and I'm not quite sure what information we would get out of it anyway. They recommended having a countywide layer that inventoried every housing unit in the county by ownership type, occupancy type, seasonality of use, condition features, all that kind of stuff, and I can't see how we would have the time to do that. Doing 100% count of seasonal beds and identifying properties that would be used for more. The seasonal count, I think, would be extremely difficult, but identifying properties that could be used for additional seasonal housing, I think, would be something that we could help out with. Annual outreach to owners of the 9,990 seasonally occupied units was the suggestion they made. Again, I don't know that that's something that would be all that practical or what we would learn from that. Hopefully through education and awareness and discussion, somebody that has a home that they're not really using would maybe be willing to think about that being converted to workforce housing, I suppose. And then an online clearinghouse listing available rentals. I'm sure, I don't know when or if it, or recently you've looked at rental listings in the newspaper, but there's hardly any. They don't need to advertise. There's almost, I think it's less than a 2% vacancy rate in any of the places in Door County. And I hear just from word of mouth, when somebody knows that they're leaving an apartment, they tell a couple friends and they tell a couple friends, and the unit is rented before they've moved out. So I don't know that we really need, one place that people can go look for units that aren't actually there. So what's happening next? That Economic Development Corporation Attainable Housing Committee is meeting on Friday, actually, to talk about the study results and the input that we got at the symposium, which that symposium that they did earlier this month was very well attended. We had, I think, every agency that we wanted to have there, and a lot of people a lot of nonprofits that are willing to work on this issue. So that's happening, and we will be refining our plan moving forward. The Peninsula Pulse does an annual sustainability issue in April of each year, and they had decided this year that the entire issue is going to be devoted to housing. So there's going to be a lot of articles and a lot of information about housing in the month of April. The Economic Development Corporation is planning on doing presentations of the study results and then the action plan to try and implement the study in northern, central, and southern Door. I think they're looking at April, but they haven't set dates or places yet for those meetings. And that's in the hopes of getting as many representatives from the different municipal plan commissions and boards there to learn about the study results as possible. And then obviously there's ongoing discussions that have been happening between the Economic Development Corporation, our staff, local nonprofits, local municipalities, and then those different state and federal agencies that are out there. So, does anybody have questions? I should say that the study itself, if you went to the link that's in your packet, don't be frightened by the fact that it's 70 pages, because it's a lot of charts. So it's actually, it doesn't actually take you that long to read it because there's not that much writing. And so all those numbers that I gave you are just kind of the overview of what's in there. They did go through in much greater detail the breakdown by income levels and what that, translated into in terms of like what level of housing costs would be appropriate for that group, and they do it in detail by geographic area.
All right.
Yeah, Linda?
This survey, I think, was initiated last summer or last fall. So did it take into account the new multi-housing development on this side of Sturgeon Bay and the one on the other side of Sturgeon Bay? And do we know what those units are going to rent for, or in a range?
I'm glad you asked, because I forgot about that. So that 470 unit shortage that they identified of rental apartments, right now, does not take into account the new construction that's happening. So I think there's like 40 something that are going up in Sister Bay, and then another, I think it's like 160 that are going up in the city of Sturgeon Bay right now. So in theory, we're close to eliminating, a third to a half of that kind of, they called it the structural gap that we were facing. As far as the rents, I'm not sure what the rents are. They're definitely not in the $500 to $800 range, I think. I think they're higher than that. So we still have that kind of lower end shortage. One of the theories that I've heard, and this might be true to some extent, is that maybe just by constructing rental housing generally, at least initially, and not worrying about what it's going to be rented at, that will kind of shuffle housing around to some extent. So maybe people that are in things right now that would rather be in something more expensive might move into the more expensive units, and that would open up what they're in. Or maybe some people who are owning a property now that would want to rent something nicer would rent, and then their house will go on the market. And so there might be some shuffling, but that's certainly not going to solve it. And Megan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, was there any discussion, first off, thanks for the great presentation. That was extremely concise and informative. Is there any discussion in all of this taking a look at the many empty commercial buildings that we have, if there is a possibility to, at least in Sturgeon Bay, we do, to, transition those into housing? I can think of a couple of buildings that people have mentioned specifically as wanting to think about whether or not that could be housing. That would certainly be something that my staff would be willing and able to help with as we're trying to identify both land and or properties around the county that could be redeveloped. And obviously then that would go hand in hand with looking at the zoning codes as well. The building code is the piece that I'm not as familiar with, because we don't have to administer that. That's done by the building inspectors that the municipalities hire. So there might be some obstacles there, but it's definitely worth looking at. Okay,
thanks. Yeah.
My husband and I own apartments in Sturgeon Bay, like small complex, but I fully agree that word of mouth actually is quicker than putting an ad out in the newspaper. For instance, a lot of times we have an apartment rented before the previous tenants have moved out because a friend of theirs hears, or, for instance, I might put something on Facebook, is anyone looking for an apartment? And that day somebody, hears it from a friend, and we get a phone call. We have put ads out in the paper, but typically it's rented before the ad either is fully listed or runs out because somebody calls somebody. Mm-hmm. And in a small area like this, everybody seems to know everyone. So I fully agree that word of mouth in this county in general ends up being a much more effective way for people to find out about listings.
Yeah, I have no argument. I mean, I remember that from when I rented. I don't think I ever found anywhere that I rented from an ad.
Right.
I knew somebody that was moving out of someplace, and I moved in. I thought I saw a hand over here. No? Oh, Vinny?
This is kind of along that comment too, but I think there might be some importance in having some kind of listing, because I've been in the situation where someone wants to take a position that's advertised in Door County, and then they go to see what their rental possibilities are, and they don't find much, so they don't take the position. So I think that's sort of an, looking at future filling of positions that where people will be moving into the county, that would be useful. And I think this study will help with that and kind of, showing that that's a possibility.
That's true. And so maybe what would be more logical as far as being actually useful, it would be to compile a list of apartment complexes in the county, or buildings, or landlords that are willing to have their name on the list, so that if somebody is moving here, they would have at least a list of people to try to call, rather than trying to keep up with who has which units available.
Yeah.
So that's a good idea. Susie?
I don't know if this, how answerable this question is, but the company that put the thing together obviously has some experience in other areas. I just wondered in general, as you discussed this, how hopeful or how likely did people feel that this is fixable? Does this seem like an insurmountable thing, or does this seem like once we look at it, there'll be, I don't know, what kind of reaction did you get?
I didn't participate, well, and one of the things that they did when the consultants came here for that week last May was mostly what they did that week was meet with people. So we tried to provide an array of employers, employees, business owners, everybody we could think of that could meet with them to provide information. So I don't know what their feelings were as far as how hopeful they were feeling. There is in the appendix of the study a fair amount of detail about the findings that they got in those interviews. I know that the Economic Development Corporation has, I think, gotten numerous calls in the last couple of weeks since the study has come out from developers. I haven't been part of any of those discussions, so I don't know exactly what those conversations have entailed, but I think that's a hopeful sign that people are at least willing to think about doing something here. I've been on that Economic Development Corporation committee since it started, and it's shocking to me that it's almost 20 years old now. But I think in the last couple of years, it feels to me, having been doing this in the county for 20 years, like there's a lot more discussion going on, and a lot more people are taking it seriously, and a lot more organizations are having serious conversations about it. So it feels like we're actually at the point where we might be able to get some things done, whether that means that we need to do a fair amount of work on zoning matters, either maps or text, or going out and seeking funding sources or private donations, the new trust that I mentioned as far as having a tool for properties, because I think that's one of the biggest things. It's expensive to develop housing, and you want the developer to be able to make money, and if they're going to make money, there's got to be something somewhere, whether it's municipal dollars or land or infrastructure or private donations coming in to make that project be something that can actually be affordable on the tail end to whoever's buying or renting it. Yeah, Helen?
Could you explain a little bit about NeighborWorks? Someone explained a little bit to me, and it sounds like something that would be very interesting and good to have here.
NeighborWorks itself, like I said, is part of a national affiliate, and I'm just becoming familiar with them these last couple of months. They work in partnership with the city of Green Bay, but like I said, they've got territory that expands out through Wisconsin. So they do a variety of things, some of which is duplicative of Lakeshore Community Action Programs in our county, because they do home buyer counseling and training and budget management and that kind of thing. But one of the programs that they do, they own apartments. They also get lots from the city of Green Bay, so the city will sometimes give them lots, and then NeighborWorks turns around and develops a home on there that then goes for in theory, workforce housing, as far as the prices they're talking about, it would be workforce housing in Door County, but they're trying to tackle a slightly different problem. They're trying to lift neighborhoods up, so they're trying to buy or obtain distressed properties, either with the city of Green Bay or on their own, and then redevelop them, maybe reconverting things back to single-family homes and that kind of thing. But they're excited about what they could do in Door County. They have some lovely homes and townhouses that a bunch of us went to tour last October, which would be, they would fit in any community up here. They are adorable houses. The price at which they're selling them would actually be the problem, because they would be snapped up in about 2 seconds in Door County by somebody that would want to be renting them to transients. So that was why we went ahead and reestablished that housing trust, because if we want the NeighborWorks to come and work in the community and have that housing become workforce housing, it needs to become part of the trust system, where it's going to be in a system that is affordable in perpetuity. But so they buy and rehab and build single-family homes. They've gotten their building down to a science because they've been doing it so long now. Noel Halverson, I've heard the director do kind of the same presentation 3 times, but I learned something every time. They're learning to design their houses around the sizes of the materials that they buy. So they're starting to size their walls so that they don't need to cut the drywall. They just slap the pieces of drywall up, and the boards that they use for baseboards and all that kind of thing. So they've got some really, if you want more information on NeighborWorks, you could go to NeighborWorks Green Bay, to their website, and then also go to the City of Green Bay website and look at their, I can't think of it's like community development or community redevelopment program, because they're the ones that are acquiring these blighted properties or taking over properties sometimes and then turning around and giving them to NeighborWorks or property owners. And the City of Green Bay, actually, they will pay people to take these lots. So they have a vacant lot that they've acquired through whatever means, whether people weren't paying their taxes or the building was falling down or whatever. So they'll take that lot, which once they own it, it's not earning any tax dollars. And they will offer $20,000 to somebody to take the lot if they are going to build owner-occupied housing on the lot, because it pays, that $20,000 is paid off, really quickly through the tax revenue that they're getting from that property. So they've got a bunch of really neat programs. Bob?
Just a comment bearing witness to the challenges we face. In the heart of the town of Bailey's Harbor, within the last year, 3 single-family homes were converted to Airbnb just right downtown. And I mean, downtown Bailey's Harbor is not a very, there's not a lot of homes there in the first place. And so just the idea of community becomes diminished and challenged when more and more houses that could be single-family dwellings are being flipped every other weekend. Thanks for listening.
Laura?
Hi. So you had mentioned that there was recommended strategies, but then also you made a comment that there was options, but we can't do those options. What are those? Is that something that is legislative? Is something that this county board could be addressing or trying to look at?
A couple of things that they had recommended. So, one is what's called inclusionary zoning. So there was a new state law that was passed within the last 2 years that precludes a municipality from doing inclusionary zoning. And what that is, if I am a developer and I'm going to be doing either a land division, so I'm creating a bunch of lots, or I'm doing a multifamily housing complex of some sort, or I'm doing a development that's all single-family homes. Inclusionary zoning is where you require that a certain percentage of them be set aside for people that are of median income or below in the community. That's not allowed in Wisconsin anymore. There used to be an ordinance in Madison that did that, and probably a couple other places. But so that's one thing that the state is preventing us from doing. There's a lot of funding mechanisms that are used in places like Massachusetts and Colorado and California and Vermont that are not options here, as far as related to like real estate transfer taxes and can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but I spent a couple of weeks ago going through a lot of the statutes related to different premier resort area tax things, real estate transfer tax, impact fees. That's another one, actually. We're very restricted in what we can do with impact fees. And impact fees are when somebody's doing a development. A lot of places will require that when you're doing your development, you put money into the parks fund and into the affordable housing fund and into the sidewalk fund or whatever it is. And in Wisconsin, you're very restricted about what you can ask to be put into such funds. And it's got to be directly related to the project that you're doing. So you wouldn't be able to like kind of get extra money for other uses. Oh, the other thing the state did last year was with regard to those tourist rooming houses, also just kind of generically called Airbnb, we are significantly limited now in how or if we can regulate those. So we cannot disallow them, I guess, is a way to say it. Anything else? I know I'm over my 20 minutes. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mariah.
Thank you, Mariah.
Grant, are you ready?
Yeah. Mariah, don't run away.
Next, we'll have the Door County Delegation October 2018 visit to Jindazen.
Hi. I'll draft Mariah because she can talk too. Hi.
Brian, can you get the light?
Good morning. I will try to be brief, but we'll see. This is sort of the fun part of the meeting. First, to introduce the delegation, the people that are here, we have Laura, of course, and in the back, Dave Hoffman, who is more than welcome to come up here if you want or comment as you deem fit. But we had a delegation visit from Door County to Jingdezhen this past fall in October. And the delegation members are up on the screen. It was Dave Lenow, Jennifer D'Antonia I can't say her last name, David. Damiani. Laura Addison Wodachek, Laura's daughter, David Hoffman, his wife, who goes by Liz, not Elizabeth, and myself. And the detail is kind of for people that might be interested. The delegation always meets the day before we travel to Jingdezhen at the Shanghai airport. And you have to meet at that specific Shanghai airport because there's only one flight per day from that airport from Shanghai to Jingdezhen. In 2016, my wife, I, and Megan, forgetting people's name, managed to miss the flight. And Laura was close.
Very close, very close.
This time. And if you miss a flight, you really are at the mercy of the airport, whether they let you on. Unlike in the U.S., however, they don't charge you for taking the flight. They figure you already paid for the flight, so they'll just get you on the plane the next day if there's room. Again, we traveled from Shanghai to Jingdezhen on October 17th, and we're in Jingdezhen from Wednesday the 17th through Saturday the 20th. And these letters are a lot smaller than I remember. Huh? Well, I can do it. And what's of importance is to look at this in context and how the relationship has evolved over time. Our visits include, or I shouldn't use the word visit, our meeting. Laura reminded me of the cultural difference. These are actually meetings. We went first to Jingdezhen University and met with the president of the university, I think the top administrative staff. It's important to note we didn't know this until we were on the ground. Who we were going to be meeting with. And during the course of that meeting, it became readily apparent to us that they wanted to further the J1 program and also engage in an agreement with NWTC, which is sort of in progress now. And one of the takeaways from that meeting was that there would be a delegation coming from the university, at least that was our impression, made up of the administrators and some of the faculty members, and we're trying to work out the details of that right now. The issue, or perhaps the impediment, is they are moving campuses, and what you have to realize in China, when they decide to do something, it just happens. So Jingdezhen University, which is a relatively large university, is going to move its campus about 45 minutes to the outskirts of Jingdezhen, and that's going to happen in August in time for the start of the 2019-2020 semester. That is all encompassing right now, and they have not, as of this date, committed to sending a delegation out here in 2019, but they're hopeful. We also, as we always do, attended the opening of the 2018 Ceramic Fair. You will note in pictures that we had front row seating, and we had the delegation members were in one front row, and David was with the other delegation leaders literally front and center within maybe 15, 20 feet of the stage. So they treat us pretty well. For the first time, the delegation was divided and we went to different activities, different meetings. I had the privilege of attending a presentation by Dr. Yanjun Wen. Yanjun is a longtime friend of Door County. He's visited here. He went to Marquette University. He was recently a visiting scholar at UCLA. So he's got his feet both in America and in China, and he's a good contact to have. His family is involved in the Ceramic Institute. When I did that, and perhaps I want to speak to it, Laura and David, and I think everybody else went to the #1 primary school and had a meeting and presentation. I think they've got a preview of a you can describe it better than I can, perhaps somebody that went, but the kids at the school put out all the stops.
Oh, yeah. I'll add to that. So with having a younger delegation member being my daughter, we were looking for other items to do. So we had interest in education. We got they arranged for a tour of a first primary school, which is 3,000 students and also 150 staff members. So just to speak to how they didn't have any stops. When we arrived there, we slowly but surely entered the school into a large production by all the students performing with music, dance, and it was remarkable. It literally took my breath away, and many of us, and it actually was quite an powerful impact on how they treated us and welcomed us. And then we went through the school and got a tour, looked at how their educational system is similar and different from ours, and how it is trickled down from the federal government right into the students. So I must say that Addison was the star of that meeting. I think she did more power for our delegation and some of these meetings than we did. So it was a blessing to have somebody so young, and hopefully we'll look forward to the youth carrying out some of these things that we've been doing. But it was very, very powerful.
I would add one thing to the presentation at the primary school, and that was about 3 or 4 weeks after our delegation was there, there was going to be an international exposition. And the point of this show that the kids put on for us was they were going to be the opening act of this international exposition. So we were like one of their live performances to practice. But what struck me was, what you have to think about is, you remember when the Olympics were in Beijing, and had this tremendous opening with all these hundreds and thousands of people. That's what this was.
Yeah.
It was like that.
For sure.
It was incredible. There was 3,000 kids performing over about a 45-minute period of time, wave after wave after wave of just incredible things that they were doing, and our little primary kids.
Just love the care that they gave to us. They hid it from us. We did not anticipate this. We were not expecting this when we got off the bus.
We thought we
it was a song with 3 children,
right.
And then it just gradually, as we entered the school, became bigger and larger and overwhelming. And the relationships, just the experience of that alone, meeting the staff and how much care and attention that they gave to us and wanting to learn about us, and us also wanting to learn about them and what they do there was remarkable.
They did that for 6 people.
Yeah, 6 people.
Speaking of surprises, I forgot, Jingdezhen University, after the meeting with the president, we found out that we had to attend a meeting, quote unquote, with about 350 freshman English students, and David was kind enough to do an impromptu presentation, and he did very well and did well by the county. Also, the two of the J1 students that were here this summer gave PowerPoint presentations about their experience here, and that I think was quite powerful. The influence that they're spending the summer here working and learning things about Door County and the culture had upon them. And what we learned was that there were about 30 students now that potentially might be coming here for next year's J1s, and also a list of listserv sort of 80 or 100 students who might be interested in doing this in coming years. So the program continues to grow.
And it's grown from 3 or 4 the first year
Yes.
to that level now. But this week, as we meet here, the Greenheart organization in Chicago, who's the agency that does the J1 students in China, has their China job fair this week. So they are over in China this week in Beijing, Shenzhen, Shanghai, doing their job fair for the Chinese students.
And again, not to put too much emphasis on it, but why we would encourage NWTC to create a relationship with Jingdezhen University is you would then have college students that were studying at NWTC, and they could stay here and work here during the summer. So it's another pool of potential workers, J1 workers, who would be available to come and help out with our summer employment needs. The group also visited Royal China. We've done that in the past, and that's I think one of the larger manufacturers of porcelain in China, and they always do a nice job, probably had tea, and meet with some of the higher ups in the organization. Dave and Liz met with the building and planning department officials from the city and gleaned some impact. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Dave, or? No? But again, it shows that if you have an interest, if you're interested in being a delegation member and you have a particular interest and you make that interest known, they will bend over backwards to make sure that you meet with people, that you get to see things. So they're very accommodating, and I can't stress enough their willingness to go over the top in meeting whatever expectations we might have. We also got to visit the Tashuan Square and met with the managers. That was myself, David, and Laura. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but what we're trying to do is a couple of things. One, facilitate the marketing and sale of Door County goods in Jingdezhen. You can't believe how big the square is. When we went in 2016, it had just opened. I can't even guesstimate, but it's at least 2 times as big as it was when we were there. And their long-term plan is for it to be 5 times larger in the next 10 years. So this is a big deal. It's a wonderful opportunity, I think, for Door County businesses to market and sell their goods. But there are impediments because it's in China, and we're trying to overcome them. One of the takeaways from the meeting with the folks at Tashuan Square is they're willing to do kind of a consignment, a pure consignment situation where we would be, by we, I mean the merchants that wanted to sell things, would have to ship the goods over there, and they would take care of marketing, sale, and all the details. But we have to get the goods over there and decide, not we, but the merchants have to get the goods over there and decide on their price point what they would need to price the items to make a profit. I don't know if you want to expand on that, but we're going to try to facilitate that in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I can add on to that. So that was one of my goals going over there to discuss and seek out potential businesses that are interested either in selling their goods or even the scholarship program. So both I had some fruit to the labor of that, but not commitment yet. So logistics being the big issue. But we wanted to go over there and also gauge the interest. So part of seeing the square is, well, what is being sold there? Is this similar to what we have goods here in Door County, if this is going to be an interest to them? So we brought over a series of different gifts and items to see if their interests. And my takeaway was, if there is companies, businesses that are selling fashionable goods, either clothing, trendy items, trends are and especially fun, trendy items. Candles are a big hit, and also oil scents. Some of these companies do exist in our county. I've reached out to a few of them. One company is interested because they had relations with selling in China before, but it did not go well. Hearing of this program and what this relationship has, and with the connection over there, it seemed to be more promising for this business person. So these are in the works. There's talks. There's obviously logistics of getting goods over there. And there also is a business owner in our county that is interested in the scholarship program to be learning on their skills for clay works and ceramics. other input on that was as for the price point. So when I went around into the square and looking at their costs, I had my calculator out and I was looking and gauging what the price points of what they have and what they're selling at. And I definitely believe that this is doable for what we sell our products here in Door County and what similar products they're selling in that square. I definitely, and I wouldn't be pursuing or asking or inquiring if businesses were interested in this if I didn't feel like that was a cost effective for them and still to make a profit. So
And then
very fruitful.
The state of Oregon was able to work out, and I've been in contact with one of the individuals, which I can fill you in later on, Laura, has a program with China where they get the same shipping fees as a Chinese organization shipping to the U.S. And if you think about it, you can order something from China and it's here 5 days later and it costs you $1.30 to get it here from Shanghai. Well, how do they do that, right? Well, working through the State Economic Development Corporation in Oregon, they were able to work it out with China, and they're now shipping hundreds of products from Oregon to do that. And they've given me the information. We would have to go to the state and get the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to enter into this program. If they did, then the same thing would apply in the state of Wisconsin. So we're working on that too.
And again, to reemphasize a point, this is a huge market. It's not tiny. There's millions of people that probably visit the square each year.
And it's the other thing that it took us a while to understand, I think through the first trip a couple years ago, was to do business in China, you have to work through the government. So it doesn't work often well if it's business to business. There's usually impediments, there's issues. But if it works through a government entity, the doors suddenly become open and you have discussions and you can make things happen. And that's a different way of doing business than how we do it in the United States. You do anything in China, you have to be involved in the government somehow. And that's why at the county level, we were able to go over and do things and talk to people that typically a business owner would not be able to do. And it's just a different way of, it's their way of doing business.
Yep.
And the final thing of note that we did in Jingdezhen was, at their request, visited a helicopter museum, which was interesting. It was a little bit, I think, outside of the city limits, but it was a neat thing to see if you're interested at all in aviation. And that's sort of the give and take of these delegation visits is they allow us to do things that are of interest to us, and then we occasionally do things that are of interest to them. So. These are just some pictures, and they were in the PowerPoint. I can go through those with you, but basically, all you need to know is our delegation has a leader. The last 2 times, it's been David. And the leader carries great emphasis and significance in China because that's the person you look to in terms of leading the discussions, if there's any decisions to be made. And a lot of times at the banquets and these events, the leaders are separated from the rest of us. So it's sort of a curious situation, but it's the way the culture is. And, you know, you have to get up and give some impromptu speeches in a language that nobody understands. And I thought it would be worthwhile before we get into the meat and potatoes of why we're doing this presentation today is post-Jingdezhen. We kind of all went off in different directions, or most of us went off in different directions. And I can speak to what we did. And by we, I met up with my wife in Beijing, Laura and Addison, and Liz and Dave, and we traveled across the country from Beijing. It's about 2,000 miles to Dali City, and about another maybe half an hour drive to the Linden Center. Brian and Jeannie Linden have a gallery up north, and for the better part of a couple decades now, they've been developing property and facilities in a little town called Shizhu. Yeah, and it really is akin to sort of a bed and breakfast more so than a hotel. And we had a wonderful time there. We spent 3 or 4 days in the old city, went up in the mountains for a hike, and did all kinds of activities. And they're a really unique resource, and it's neat that they are sort of headquartered out of Northern Door County and have ties to both Northern Door and China. Going back to the other topic, they've indicated a willingness to assist with shipping of goods because when they ship things from China to their gallery in Northern Door, oftentimes the shipping container has to go back to China, and oftentimes there is room in there, so that's an area there to negotiate. It's not huge, it's probably not going to meet needs for long term, but if somebody wanted to send over some goods just to dip their toes into the water over there, that's a possibility. We haven't discussed that at length with the Lindens, but it's possible. David went to Shanghai again and did day trips.
When I went to Shanghai, well, in 2016, when I went to Shanghai, we just spent a couple of days there. And Shanghai it's just an interesting city. It is on the cutting edge of technology. If you think of Beijing and the old wall and the Tiananmen Square, and that's the old style, old life of China, Shanghai is just the opposite. It's the cutting edge of technology in Asia. To give you an example of the scale of things in there, if you took New York, and you took Chicago, and you took LA, and you combined them all together population-wise, the region of it doesn't equal 3/4 of the population of Shanghai. So you have that many people living in Shanghai, and everything works. The railways work, the sewer and water works, the electric, everything just works like it should in a place that large. But we chose to go to Shanghai because you could also do day trips out of there using the high-speed trains. So you could get up and eat breakfast at the hotel, jump on the train station just down the street a block or two away, and take a day trip 200 miles, 300 miles away and be back by dinner that night. Because high-speed trains were 250 to 300 kilometers an hour. So it was nothing to go to these day trips, and you'd be out in another, you'd think you were back out in the old country again. We went to an ancient city called Suzhou, which is the water village or water city, and it was like turning back the clock centuries. And here you just left Shanghai in the morning from your hotel, and you come back and you're back at 7 o'clock at night, you're back there again having dinner because of the transportation system that they had. So we spent like 7 or 8 days in Shanghai just doing that kind of things, just to know more about Shanghai. So it was great.
And the Yunnan province is kind of the exact opposite. We were within driving distance of Myanmar, which used to be called Burma. And, there's still relatively huge centers of population. Delhi City's fairly big, but when you get off the mountains, there's just nothing there, little villages and whatnot. So it's kind of a neat contrast. After Dolly City, David and Liz went to Xi'an and had adventures on your way back to Beijing. Yeah. And Addison and Laura did the same thing. One thing they did in common was the Great Wall.
Yes, we tackled the Great Wall in an old section that we climbed that I never thought I was going to have to climb like that in my life. So that was interesting. Then I found out later on there's sections where there's like elevators and such that can make it to the Great Wall. So yes, I almost fell off the Great Wall. But it was I think it was more of an experience and a challenge for my daughter. But also then we went to Beijing. We also went to a technology museum, which was located, that's been around since the early 1980s. And also that was in an area where they had hosted for the Olympics, which was remarkable to go into that area and see in the technology museum, which really hosted quite a few of hundreds and hundreds of their youth through school trips. So we engaged with other students and learned not through words of language, but through actually doing and touching and experiencing the technology, which I gotta say there was quite a bit of engineering, and I comparing to our museums, technology museums in the States to them, quite large and more magnificent for sure on how they educate and train their children on manufacturing.
With putting together the PowerPoint, there were close to 1,000 pictures, and I had to pare them down, and I'm not very good at it. But some of the ones here, the Blue Diamond, or Blue Dragon, was in Jingdezhen, just alongside a highway and a lake. Why, who knows, but we took a picture of it. Next two pictures are activities at the Linden Center, sort of what I call tie-dye, but it's far more sophisticated than that. That's my wife with blue hands, and then that's one of the items that the group had made, I think, or participated in making. The bottom right-hand picture is a picture we took in Lijiang, which is even further north and further west than Dali City, and it's in the foothills of the Snow Mountain. It's just an incredibly beautiful area where there's not a heck of a lot going on, but neat to see. And then just some other pictures. David took pictures of Shanghai. That's the financial district at night, all lighted up, and then the bottom pictures were in the daytime. And just some other random pictures that I took off of our common Google site where we
I'll make note
downloaded
of just
pictures.
the upper right side is myself and Laura. Laura was a J1 student that I had at the store last summer. And she just happened to be on the same flight
Yes.
as Grant was going over to China. She was going home from her time here. And then I was able to contact her when I was in Shanghai. She'd never been to Shanghai before, and she lived about 400 miles away. So she took a high-speed train in and spent a couple days with us in Shanghai. And was able, which is great to have a local interpreter, you know, a local individual walk around with you. So I was able to, it was nice to meet with her in her own home country.
And a couple of those pictures, the one in the middle and the one on the bottom right, are from the hike we took through the mountains, which was rather arduous, more so than I think most of us thought. All right, the kind of takeaways and the whole point, I think, beyond the presentation today is there will be hopefully a delegation from Jingzhen visiting Door County in 2019. And what we're hoping is that the focus is on an educational exchange involving faculty and administrators from Jingzhen University, but that's far from certain at this point. We continue to promote the J1 visa program, and I think it's safe to say we're happy in its growth from what Dave said, 2 or 3 students to what we hope might number 10 times that this summer. And we have a pool of students that are interested and I think are given that presentation at Jingzhen University, sort of word of mouth, and the J1 students are going back and saying really nice, good things about the time they spent in Door County is going to help us. We're going to continue to try to explore areas of potential agreement between Jingzhen University and NWTC. And I just spoke with the folks at NWTC about that earlier this week, and that's still something that's in progress. As we said, we're trying to facilitate the marketing and sale of Door County products at Tashawan Square. Recruit and retain local artisans to fill the oblong openings in the fence around Tashawan Square. There are 9 oblong openings are 30 by 16 inches, and what we need to do is recruit artisans from Northern Door to create art that will withstand the elements outside that can be put into those openings, and that was sort of a goal back in 2016, and we'll try to make a concerted effort to do that and maybe even facilitate that with a bit of funding if we can find some, because I don't think we can rationally expect the artisans to do this for nothing. We want at least kind of a break even. The other thing that Laura mentioned, and I think we just got extended for another year, or we're going to, is the scholarship. There's been a standing offer for probably a decade or more of people from Door County can go over to the Jingzhen Ceramic Institute and study for free for 2, 3, 4 weeks. I don't know that there's really a, you know,
Well,
Helen did
it. 3 weeks, and then they told me I could stay another week or 2.
Yeah, I don't think you would ever get booted out. Yeah, up to 3 months. And yet they put you up in a dorm. And if you were interested in ceramics, that would be something to do. And then I'll put in a pitch. In 2020, we have a delegation plan to go from Door County to visit Jingzhen again. And we need people that are willing and interested to do that. Right now, Mariah and I kind of headed up from the county standpoint, and we will continue to facilitate that. I don't know, and I'm pretty sure Mariah doesn't know if we're going to be going in 2020, but if anybody's interested, they can surely contact us, and we can make it as easy for you as possible, because we now have a couple visits under our wings and kind of have a pretty good idea on how all this works. So with that, I'll wrap this up. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but Susie?
Hi, I don't have a question, I just want to comment. As one of the people, and over the years, a number of people from the county have gone, and other supervisors, and I was one of those, 2015 maybe. It's a wonderful experience, and unless the public misunderstands, none of that travel comes from the county coffers. That is all on the dime of the person who chooses to go. But we've built this pool of people now in this county who have been there and part of this, and it's wonderful to look at. I was there when Tauchichuan Square was well under construction, but only under construction, and our square was just begun, and it's great to see that it's actually happening, and all of these things are bearing fruit. So I certainly encourage anybody who wants to do this. It's a wonderful experience, but it is on your own dime.
And it's, what else is important is once you step foot in Jingdezhen, they pay for everything. So in terms of room, board, they give you more food than you can possibly eat, and occupy a fair amount of your time, but we've reached an equilibrium now where in 2018, it was my impression that we had much more freedom to just wander around than we did in 2016. And one of the differences personally in the visit from 2016 to 2018 is I spent quite a bit of time late in the evening and early in the morning just walking around Jingdezhen, and it's actually a really neat city. In 2016, I felt so rushed, I had no concept of where anything was, and by walking around, you kind of get an idea of where you are and how you get from point A to point B. So we also have gifts. I forgot to bring those down, but I'm sure we'll take a break before the county board meeting's over, and I'll run up and get those and show them to you, and Helen will take them over to the display at the ADRC, and if you're ever interested, take a look. I think it's about curated.
Well, yes, we're just about done. I'd like to thank Property for purchasing the display cases for us, and Human Services for allowing us to put them at the community center. So we have two lighted cases that we have full of past gifts that we have received, and we have a place for the two new ones that'll go in there. And I wrote up a short article with some pictures, so for those of you that feel you're too young to go to the ADRC, at least look at the pictures, and if you're in the building, you might want to take a walk over. We have a light pole, and it really is a very nice display.
I guess I would add one final thing. If somebody's thinking about a delegation, one thing I was always asked by people who were thinking about it was, is it safe in China?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I've been in a lot of places in China. There's places in China I've walked down alleys wondering, what am I doing going down here? Okay. I've never felt unsafe in China, no matter where I was, no matter what time of day or night, no matter who I was with. I've never felt unsafe in China. Quite the opposite. You feel quite secure.
And language is not a barrier whatsoever. Where we traveled, I was a little bit worried this time because we were literally in the middle of nowhere, but we still were able, at the end of the day, to get Google Translate, and if nothing else, you can use your smartphone to go back and forth, because they're far more connected than we are.
Oh, yes.
So everywhere. So thanks. Oops.
In recruiting or talking to people about whether or not they'd want to be part of the delegation, what sort of things as a county are we looking for representatives?
Really, anything at all, anything that anybody might be interested in. The core focus is still going to be the ceramic fair, the relationship with Jingdezhen University and the J1 students, but above and beyond that, I think they're open to pretty much, anything. As I said, Dave and Liz were interested in some of the planning and building codes and things of that nature. We've talked about retail at one, but education, one of the delegations focused on healthcare. We had talked about getting a delegation. We just haven't been organized enough of the judges and the district attorney and somebody from my office to do the legal. So pretty much anything you can think of. And the more diverse the group, I think, the more interesting it is for everybody. Because as wonderful as the fair is, as wonderful as visiting the university and visiting the Tashwan Square, you want to do things above and beyond that. And it's just a matter of communicating that to our host, and they'll make sure that it happens. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks, Mariah.
Thanks, Grant.
Actually, I'll add one thing, just to bring it back around. So the J1 Visa program, just to remind everybody, the employers that are on this end that are trying to get students, whether it be from China or any other country, they have to provide housing.
Very good. There you go. Tied in.
Very true. Okay, next we'll have Door County Capital Improvement Program approved project summary. Ken and Wayne.
All right, so Wayne and I are going to take off on just a short presentation. But again, there's been just a couple comments by the supervisors in terms of our capital projects and the things that we're doing. And we just thought, and just talking with David, we thought it'd be nice just to kind of go through and I guess just provide a summary again of what we're doing with our capital improvement program and how it all comes together. So I'll try to keep it a little bit short, and then that way we can have Wayne come up at the end and just talk about our projects, which is probably more of an interest to you as far as this year. But again, if you go to your packet, some of the stuff's already provided on page 60 and 61 of your packet, just in terms of the projects and so forth. But again, this is our capital improvement program. If you, and I didn't realize it's going to be, is it line by line? Oh, all right. I didn't realize that. I apologize. I'll throw it up there. So again, our capital improvement program, obviously it's something that we try to do. It's a tool that we use to look out, usually at least 5 years out into the future. It really helps us plan in terms of our capital expenditures and how we can, I guess, forecast our budgetary needs for the county. And again, you can see some of the items that we have down as far as objectives. Again, I won't go through and read every single one. But again, it's a tool for us to look into the long term and also helps us to identify our future needs as far as capital expenses. And it's really something that, you know, as putting together the budget that we try to look at each year in making sure that we have a budget that we can sustain going forward. The one thing that I would like to point out is that once we have that project identified and it's in the budget, it goes through the budget process. In our minds, in terms of going forward, it's a go. It's a project that is approved and shall go forward. So, I mean, that's kind of the way we approach the capital improvement program. So again, a reminder, again, this is also in your packet on page 60, kind of defines them out. But again, what we do as far as capital improvement, it kind of tells you that it's a non-recurring expense. I think that's the most important item that stands out. Again, these are for projects that are usually considered a one-time expense, have a certain value of over $50,000, and has a life of over 5 years. So again, that's what we're kind of looking at when we look at our capital expenses, something that's non-recurring in our budgetary process. Oops. And again, this is more, I think this one's more self-explanatory, but again, just in terms of our timing of how we go forward. Again, we go through this process. We're actually working on the budget for, just worked on the timeline for next year for 2020 already. But again, when we go through the process, we actually go out and ask all the department heads and even through their committees of what projects we think that we have coming forward. Those are put together by June, and then in July, we bring those back to the Finance Committee. And it actually comes all the way to County Board to approve the plan. Now again, that plan, if you look at your packet, usually it looks like the document on page 61, what actually shows all the projects. It'll show you the projects that were, I guess, submitted, and it'll also show you the projects that we actually either canceled or postponed or adjusted or changed the funding levels. And what you end up with is you have the projects that are identified in page 61 and 62 are projects that, if approved in the budget document, going forward all the way through until November, once those projects are, I guess, adopted as part of the budget, again, we are assuming that those projects shall now move forward the next fiscal year. So I just want to give you an idea of how we're putting that together each year, just as a reminder, because there's just been some questions. We've been doing a lot of, I guess, larger capital projects that, I guess, have gone through and brought up more questions, which is good. But we're just trying to go through that process and then just to make sure you guys are comfortable with how we're communicating and how those projects are moving forward. So what Wayne's going to do is maybe just talk about, again, with our projects of how we're trying to communicate with you and I guess what areas we have in terms of, I guess, checkpoints to make sure that you're comfortable with how we are working on these capital projects. So I'll let Wayne do that part.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I just want to clarify one piece. So when we come back to that June and July meeting and approve the capital improvement plan through the county board, that's where adjustments are made, and then we get to that final. So through August, September, and October, there's some internal talks and figuring out where the budget is and where it stands. And so when it comes back to you again in November, that's where you'll see those line strikes. And so that's where some of those questions have come up. Hey, how did this change? Why did it change? Where did we get to where we got to? So in November, there's changes that have to happen sometimes in order to balance that budget and make that 5-year plan, I guess, more fair and more equitable so that we can leverage those costs across that 5 years. Does that make sense? So is it the yellow one next? So these will all come up. So now in our CIP process, we have different types of projects. So where I'm most involved is the brick and mortars project. And then we have equipment projects, we have software projects, and then we actually have highway as part of the CIP process too. So you'll see that in the CIP plan. So highway has a lot of projects in there that they project out, and they're part of the bigger picture. But I'm just going to talk about the brick and mortar, the equipment, and the software. So a lot of that process happens with equipment and software. So those things we can do by direct bid and quoting out. A lot of times we'll just use architectural engineer and construction management services. One of the things that we're trying to model is after the ADRC and community center resolution. So we're modeling that resolution and that success in our next resolutions as we move forward, and creating checkpoints where those resolutions come back to the county board for review within the process of each project. So on these brick and mortar projects, the Facilities and Parks Committee essentially authorizes the project to move forward. If it's over $25,000, then we have to do RFP bids, and those are by state statutes. And then the resolutions would come to the county board as we move forward with those capital improvement projects. We'll do bids, quotes, and reviews that are sometimes reviewed by myself and Corp Counsel. Sometimes if we employ a construction manager in some of our other projects, then those bids might be direct bid back to that construction manager, and then they bring them to us for review, and then they would come back to the home committee. So each project is sometimes a little bit unique, but it will have a natural stop point back to the county board in that process. And then the home committees. So when we get down to the next ones, we have a couple examples of projects and services. So for instance, the library chiller specifically, which is one that's going on right now, that's a partner project with the city. So the county shares 50% of those projects, just as we did with the roofing project, and now the chiller, which has been bid out and then accepted and awarded. So 50% of that project is based on the cost for the county and 50% based on the cost for the city. So that was bid out, they were reviewed, and then those were awarded at the home committee. That's a project that didn't have to naturally come back to the county board, so that wasn't by resolution. It was a project that was approved and moved forward through the process. The next one, financial software. Again, that was a project that went through home committee for concurrence, and then it was awarded. Another example that's a little bit different, and you'll see that one in your packet today that I'm sure you've reviewed already, is the storage building for the sheriff's cars and different evidence. So that one's going to be a little bit different as we're trying to model again that success program that we had with the community center and EMS building, where we want to bring those to natural stops back to the county board as we move forward and approve these projects. So with the brick and mortar projects, we have a designated project in the CIP program. It's budgeted, and then we get construction and we bid that out. We have a natural checkpoint that comes back to the county board. We review that at the home committee for awards. If it's within the budget, we create the resolution to proceed with the project, and that comes to the county board again. And then the project begins after the approval's done, and then myself, or if we have a construction manager on a larger project, or if we think it's a unique project, say for instance Cana Island, right? So very unique project where we have a lot of different moving parts. We employ a construction manager and an architectural engineering firm that'll help me out with those processes. So here are the projects that we have for 2019. So the land record software has been selected. I'm not sure exactly where they're at in that process, but I believe they're implementing it right now. The Door County Library chiller replacement, that's been awarded. We have a site meeting on Friday that's being planned. Cana Island Phase 3 Interpretive Center, that's out for bid, and the bids are being evaluated right now by our construction manager who we've hired. And those will be coming back to the home committee next month for a review and evaluation on that project. The government center remodel, that has come through the county board. and that is in progress right now. We are in week 2 of that project on the 1st and 3rd floors. The John Miles Park curb and gutter and paving project, so that again has been awarded. That's been in the CIP for a number of years now, and last year we brought it back to the CIP, increased the budget, and then put that out to bid as 2, I don't want to say separate projects, but the concrete work was awarded to Summers. We had 1 bid on that, and then the paving is actually being done by our highway department, so we're going to self-perform that. And then we got a separate piece, which is a landscape, and that's going to be designed and done as well into that project. Washington Island EMS building project, that the documents I'm just finishing up, and then they'll be reviewed by Corp Counsel. So that is really a bid to go out for architectural engineering. So the land contracts, once they're finished up for the donation of the land, we'll finish up the documents to bid for an RFP for an architectural engineering firm to start that process for design development. We talked about the Sheriff Department cold storage and evidence facility, which there's a resolution today in your packets, and the LaSalle County Park and Pavilion project, there's a resolution as well in your packet that follows essentially the model that I talked about today. And that's the last one. So questions about our process and what direction that we're trying to go and model what we've been doing. I'm that good. Awesome. Yep. We try.
Or that disappointing.
I'll just make a comment.
Maybe.
I just want to thank you, Wayne, for the overview and for the effort to keep things clear and, you know, moving along in a way that keeps everybody informed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. We'll point out there are 2 additional reports that you can click on your links and review them if you haven't already. The Door County Housing Authority annual report for 2018 and the annual report of gift grants and donations for 2018. Before we move back up to our resolutions, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. And please keep it at 10 minutes so we can zip right along.